Great. Well, now I'm going to talk to Marco from the Electro Spinning Company. So, Marco, could I start off by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us about the role that you have at Electro Spinning Company?
Sure. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Marco Thio. I head the business development activities of the Electro Spinning Company, a small company on the Harvard campus. I've been there for 3.5 to 4 years now. I am responsible for everything that has to do with customer acquisition, customer service, marketing, etc.
Great. And have you always worked in business development?
I'm maybe a classic example of a scientist that turned to the dark side of commercial activities. So I did a PhD. I'm not really professor material. So after my PhD, I became a product manager for a biomaterial company, contract manufacturing experience. And I moved to the United Kingdom in 2015. I joined shortly in 2015. I joined a intellectual property company, Color IP, bit of an exotic holiday from Biomaterials. I wanted to explore the world of IP. Got a bit fed up with the intangibles, so now I'm back to something that I can touch and that can be implanted into man.
Great. And just to help people contextualize the discussion, can you just in a few words explain what are the biomaterials that the Electro Spinning Company produces?
Yeah, the Electro Spinning Company is a contract design and manufacturing organization. So we do not make our own materials, we don't sell our own materials, but we provide our technology, electro spinning technology, to our customers so that they can utilize it to make biomaterials for implantation into man to regenerate damaged tissues. From top to bottom, that goes from neurosurgery all the way down to foot and ankle repair. We have customers all over the body, I would almost say.
Okay, that's great. So we're talking today about your experiences of business development over the course of the last year and how the changes in working practice have changed the way that you do business development. So I'm guessing if we look back 18 months ago from where we are now in the spring of 2021, that life for you involved going to lots of conferences, lots of partnering events, lots of outreach and travel to meet with your customers.
That's correct. And I do miss that. That's all gone.
It's all gone. So, so recognizing that has all gone, can you tell us how you adapted to the change in working back in March 2020?
Yeah, I think like many, if not all, the video conferencing like we're doing right now has completely taken over. It's as close to your customer as many of us have been able to. I do believe that most people that are in my profession, they do miss that personal contact. I can imagine that. I certainly do. I think one of the challenges shortly after the first lockdown was announced is to marry the job with personal life. I think when you have a family at home, you try to combine calls with customers while you have your child at home, etc. And I've had quite a few funny incidences where unwanted guests were on my video call, but that turned out actually quite helpful to break the ice. So, but it's very much via digital means such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever system there is out there. I haven't totally switched over to that. I am looking forward to a more open world again.
I'm sure you are. I think we all are. So presumably you had already a set of pre-existing relationships and clients where you were able to shift from those face-to-face meetings, that personal engagement into operating through this digital platform world that we're now so familiar with. Can you tell us a little bit about the approach that you've taken with new customers, with relationships that you've formed in purely this online world?
Yeah, there's not much choice other than going through video conferencing or having a normal phone call, for that matter. That's the means that you have, even with people that are sending out, that are inquiring totally out of the blue and we've never met before. This is what we have as a tool. This is what we need to use. And if I look back at the last year, business has been not really affected in terms of new customer acquisition. In contrast, actually, I think we've done better than previous years. So yeah, and people accept that this is the way it has to go because of the limitations of the pandemic.
So that's really interesting that you say that actually the last year has gone really well for you in terms of new customer acquisition. Has that been customers that have found you through your website and your communications channels? Or have you done something differently to try and target new customers?
A little bit of both. In 2019, the Electro Spinning Company ramped up its outgoing activities tremendously, we would say. Visiting conferences, reaching out directly to parties that we would like to work with. And it does take a while in medical devices for somebody to become convinced of what you do. So effectively what we've done is we've prepared the lawn in 2019, and now in 2020 we could reap the benefits of that work. But that was more or less, a result of outgoing activities. At the same time, the electrospinning technology has matured and has become a topic on the radar of many other companies. So we see an increasing demand in it, certainly from the medical device companies, and that reflects in a high number of inbound inquiries. So both have resulted in a steady flow of work coming to our company.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear. And presumably you have still participated in online conferences and events as much as you possibly can. Any thoughts on how to make the most of those?
Quite frankly, they suck. I think those virtual conferences, they are nothing like being out there on the exhibition floor, having a booth and engaging with them. And let me tell you why. First of all, you don't have personal engagement. Okay, we can live with that. But by not being there, talking to the delegates, walking around on an exhibition floor, one cannot learn from the sector that one actually works in. If you go to a cardiovascular conference, you walk around, you see the new trends, you speak to the people, you get a better feel for what is this market all about. And all that is not possible, in my opinion, by a virtual exhibition. And we've been on a few as the Electro Spinning Company, and I must say they do put in quite a lot of effort. But what you're effectively doing is, you could be sitting, lying in bed with your laptop and scrolling through more or less like glorified web page of a company trying to promote its services. That's not really how you learn about the sector. That's not how you engage, I think, in a more classic way of being there on site. So I repeat myself that I'm absolutely not a favor of these virtual conferences, at least from our perspective as a contract manufacturer.
Okay, so presumably you are desperately waiting for everything to open up and for those to resume.
Yes, we are, call me naive or optimistic, but we've booked 2 shows for the latter end of this year, hoping that things will have opened up and we will be able to be on the ground again. So I think this is really something that we as a company need to do.
Thinking about perhaps the materials that you use. So my experience of going to partnering conferences, particularly where you might be doing short one-to-one meetings, presumably you had a suite of materials that you would take into those meetings. Did you need to produce completely new marketing materials over the course of the last year, or did you find that you've been able to use what you already had?
We haven't really produced new marketing materials. If there's anything that we can't do is to have a conversation and actually show a piece of electrospun material, like a very thin piece of plastic. That is a bit of a miss. But it has never, been a tool that makes or breaks a deal. So I would say it's not it hasn't had a huge impact on what we do.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I guess to finish off this conversation, we've already talked about the fact that you think certainly, for your business and the way that you work, you need to see a reopening up of events, conferences, partnering, exhibition type of activity. But as we're talking today, we're still under very considerable restrictions. So this is some way off in the future. So what do you predict the future of your type of role is going to be, and how do you think you will be operating moving forward?
I would be naive if I would say everything goes back how it was before COVID hit the world. COVID has changed the world. I think nobody will disagree with me on that. Also, business development or customer, how to deal with your customers has changed. I can envision that there might be slightly less travel, and you might jump on a Microsoft Teams Zoom call. What you normally would say, okay, I jump in the car, or I fly over to you and talk about this, because people are just more familiar with talking over screens this way. But when I speak to people that have been joining, virtual conferences, former colleagues, etc., they all say that they miss the more personal engagement. And I think you get a great deal of satisfaction of having that personal engagement. So what I believe is we're going to see a combination of both, where we will be traveling again, we will be seeing each other again, we will be having a cup of coffee and talking things through, but maybe not as frequent, or maybe not in the same manner as we did before. Technology will help us prevent that a little bit, or do that at a reduced level. It's good for the planet, less carbon footprint, I admit. But it's certainly not going to be the same as before the pandemic. That I cannot imagine.
Okay, so your prediction, a much more blended approach. But clearly, I think from what you're saying, that in terms of that making contact, developing interest, forming the early part of the relationship, that face-to-face, there's no substitute for it.
Yes, absolutely. See, we as a company, in development of medical devices or biomaterials, once a customer is in a late stage of development, it's very important to talk a lot, to have excellent communication, even more so than in the beginning where you're at the feasibility stage. At that point in time where it becomes so critical, having no restrictions to meet and to sit together for days, work through complicated processes, that we've learned cannot be done that well over a computer screen. It's good to have that personal engagement. It solves a lot of problems. So, and that's maybe not necessarily business development, but it does involve, making the customer happy.
Great. Well, that sounds like a really good point to stop the conversation. Happy customers is absolutely essential for everybody, isn't it? So
yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we do. That's why I think people are in business development, to please their customer.
great. Okay. Well, Marco, thank you very much. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and experiences from the last year, and also giving us a little bit of an overview of what the Electro Spinning Company does. I'm really pleased that 2020 was a really good year for you, despite all of the upheavals, and I hope that 2021 continues to go in the same way for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. It was a pleasure.